4 years after Elena Moretti's murder, her private safe opened for the first time, and Luca found his plus-size assistant inside, weeping over a cassette recorder. He struck Clara before she could explain, convinced she had been stealing from his dead wife. Then the recorder began playing by itself. Elena's voice filled the room, calm but terrified, naming the date of her own death, and warning Luca that the killer would one day return as someone he trusted. The message ended, before revealing a name. Clara insisted there was a second recording, but it had already been removed from the safe. The only clue left behind was a fresh fingerprint on the empty case. It belonged to a man whose funeral Luca had attended 3 years earlier. As armed guests gathered downstairs to celebrate a new alliance, Luca realized one of them had built an entire identity from the ashes of his wife's murder, and Clara might be the next person scheduled to die. The sound of Luca Moretti's palm striking Clara Hayes echoed through the private suite his wife had left untouched for 4 years. Clara stumbled against the paneled wall, one hand catching the edge of an antique writing desk before she fell. Behind her, the black steel door of Elena Moretti's safe stood open, exposing velvet-lined shelves that no servant, soldier, or blood relative had been permitted to see since the night Elena died. Luca stared at his plus-size assistant as if she were a stranger wearing a familiar face. For 7 years, Clara had controlled his calendar, memorized the habits of his enemies, and carried messages that could have started wars without once breaking his confidence. Now she was standing inside the most forbidden room in his estate, holding a cassette recorder that had belonged to his dead wife. "Who gave you the combination?" Luca demanded. Blood from Clara's split lip darkened the corner of her mouth, but she did not answer. Heavy footsteps sounded in the corridor as Luca's guards approached, drawn by the silent alarm. Downstairs, more than 60 armed guests were gathering for the engagement banquet that would unite the Moretti organization with the powerful Valenti family. In less than an hour, Luca was expected to announce his marriage to Sofia Valenti. Clara had chosen the one night when every rival, ally, and ambitious relative would be watching him. That could not be an accident. "Put the recorder down," he ordered. Clara tightened her fingers around it. "Not until you hear what's on it." Luca took a step closer. "You broke into my wife's room. I opened a safe Elena told me never to touch unless you decided to marry again." The words stopped him. Clara had worked for Elena before becoming his assistant, but Luca had always believed their relationship was limited to appointments and household accounts. Elena had trusted very few people. Even fewer had known how frightened she had become during the final weeks of her life. "My wife never gave you permission to come in here. She gave me the first half of the combination 4 days before she died." Clara's voice trembled, though her gaze remained steady. "The second half was hidden in the engagement announcement you made this morning." Luca's anger sharpened into suspicion. That sounded too carefully constructed, too convenient. "Search her," he told the guards entering behind him. Matteo Rinaldi, his security chief, seized Clara's arms, while another guard removed her phone, a brass key, and a folded seating chart from her pockets. No weapon, no stolen jewelry, nothing that explained why the safe's alarm had transmitted a signal through a security system Clara should not have been able to bypass. Matteo examined the cassette recorder. "It could contain a transmitter." "It doesn't," Clara said. "And if you take it apart before playing it, we lose the only warning Elena left him." Luca reached for the recorder, but Clara pulled it back. Matteo twisted her wrist until her fingers opened. The recorder fell onto the carpet, striking the leg of the desk. Its play button depressed with a mechanical click. Static hissed through the tiny speaker. Then Elena's voice entered the room. "Luca, if you are hearing this, Clara has opened the safe, which means you have chosen another wife." No one moved. Luca felt the air leave his lungs. Elena's voice was unmistakable, low, composed, and carrying the slight rasp she developed when she had gone too long without sleep. "Do not punish Clara. I gave her the code because she is the only person in this house they never bother to see. I was wrong about the explosion planned for Thursday. It is not a warning. It is an execution. If I do not survive, the person responsible will disappear. Wait until you believe the danger has passed, and return beneath a name you trust." The tape crackled. Elena inhaled as if preparing to say something more. "The man who arranged it is..." A harsh metallic scrape swallowed the next words. The cassette continued turning, but Elena's voice was gone. Luca snatched up the recorder and stared at the reels. A section of tape had been carefully cut away and rejoined. Someone had removed the name. "Was it like this when you found it?" he asked. "No." Clara looked toward the open safe. "The cassette case was sealed when I entered. Someone opened it after the alarm sounded, but before you reached this room." Matteo immediately denied that anyone else had crossed the corridor. Clara knelt beside the safe and lifted the clear plastic case by its edges. A greasy fingerprint marked its inner surface. Luca recognized the distinctive break running through the center of the print. He had seen it pressed into black ink, on loyalty oaths, and weapons permits for most of his adult life. It belonged to Adrian Moretti, his father's former consigliere, the man accused of arranging Elena's murder, the man Luca had watched being lowered into a grave 3 years earlier. Before Luca could speak, the lights went out across the estate. From downstairs came the sudden thunder of doors locking simultaneously. Then a man's voice entered Luca's earpiece through the private security channel. "Welcome to your engagement, Luca. Before midnight, you will finally join your wife." The emergency lights failed to come on. For 3 seconds, Luca heard nothing but the cassette turning inside the recorder, and the muffled panic spreading through the floors below. Then Matteo began issuing orders into his radio, but every channel answered with the same low pulse. 3 short tones followed by 1 long tone. "They've jammed us," Matteo said. "No," Clara replied from somewhere near the safe. "They've trapped the system in a maintenance loop." Luca heard fabric brush against wood as she moved along the wall. "Stay where you are," he ordered. "If I stay here, everyone downstairs remains locked inside." A faint click sounded, followed by the scrape of a narrow panel opening. Clara had found an old mechanical switch concealed behind Elena's bookcase. Luca remembered seeing electricians install the panel during the mansion's renovation, but he had never asked what it controlled. Clara had. She asked about everything, usually while standing at the edge of a room where men with louder voices forgot she was listening. "There is a manual generator beneath the West Service staircase," she said. "It predates the digital security network, so whoever sees the main system cannot control it remotely. But someone has to reset it from below." "How do you know that?" Matteo asked. "Because Elena noticed the contractor charging the family for 2 generators when only one appeared on the inventory. She made me trace every invoice. The missing unit was installed as an isolated backup." Luca could barely make out Clara's broad silhouette as she removed her shoes, tucked them beneath the desk, and stepped into the narrow passage behind the bookcase. Her cream blouse was torn at the wrist where Matteo had restrained her, and the dark line at her mouth had reached her chin, yet she had not once asked for help. "You're not going alone," Luca said. "Then keep up." The passage was too narrow for Matteo and the guards to follow together, forcing them into a single line. Clara moved first, guiding them through darkness by counting doors under her breath. Luca followed close enough to hear her controlled breathing. It struck him that she had used the same calm voice during raids, funerals, and negotiations, always making sure his cars were fueled, his exits were clear, and his meetings never overlapped with threats. When something went right, Luca assumed his organization was functioning as designed. When something failed, he called Clara. He had never asked how much of that functioning depended on her. They reached a cramped stairwell smelling of dust and machine oil. Clara descended 12 steps, felt beneath the railing, and found a metal key taped to its underside. "Elena left that there?" Luca asked. "I did, 6 years ago." Without informing security? Matteo's accusation came instantly. "I informed the security chief who held your position at the time. Adrian Moretti approved it." The name silenced them. Clara inserted the key into a control box and pulled a heavy red lever. The generator coughed once, then roared beneath their feet. Amber emergency lights flickered through the passage. Radios crackled back to life. Matteo's men reported that the ballroom doors had unlocked and the guests were unharmed. The threatening voice had vanished from the private channel. "It was a demonstration," Clara said as she studied the control box. "Whoever did this wanted Luca to know they could reach the mansion. Or you arranged it to make yourself indispensable," Matteo replied. Luca looked at Clara. 4 years ago, he would have rejected the accusation without hesitation. Tonight, he could not dismiss it. She had known the safe code, the passage, the generator, and the hidden key. She possessed access that even his security chief lacked. Clara saw the doubt return to his face and gave a small, bitter nod. "Of course. I saved 60 people from a locked ballroom, and that becomes another reason to suspect me." They returned through the passage as music resumed downstairs. The guests had been told a power regulator had failed. By the time Luca entered the ballroom, champagne was flowing again, and the orchestra had begun playing louder to bury the tension. Nobody asked Clara what had happened. 2 captains handed her their phones and demanded that she repair the evening's schedule. A council member complained that his table had been moved. Sofia Valenti, radiant in a silver gown, approached Luca with a practiced smile, glanced at Clara's swollen cheek and bloodied lip, and showed no concern. "I warned you she was becoming possessive," Sofia murmured. "Women like her mistake usefulness for importance." Clara lowered her eyes, but Luca noticed her grip tighten around the folded seating chart returned by the guard. She opened it, compared two table numbers and went pale. The blackout wasn't only a demonstration, she whispered. Someone changed the seating plan while we were upstairs. She showed Luca the original chart. His assigned seat had been moved from the central table to the raised platform beside Sophia. Directly beneath that chair, visible through a gap in the decorative drapery, a small red light had begun blinking. Clara reached for Luca just as the light stopped. Clara struck Luca in the chest with both hands and drove him backward as a sharp metallic snap came from beneath the platform. Matteo drew his pistol. Two guards moved toward the chair, but Clara blocked them. Don't touch it. The light went out because the pressure circuit finished arming. Sophia stared at her. You expect us to believe you can identify a bomb from across the room? Clara ignored her and pointed toward the musicians. Keep them playing. If the guests panic, whoever planted it will know we found it. Luca ordered Sophia to return to her family, then signaled his guards to close the platform without disturbing the ballroom. Within 90 seconds, couples were being invited onto the dance floor, while a false announcement blamed the seating delay on spilled wine. Matteo's explosive specialist crawled beneath the drapery and confirmed Clara's warning. A flat directional charge had been fixed below Luca's chair, designed to fire upward when his weight completed the circuit. It was narrow enough to kill the person seated above it, without collapsing the platform or harming most of the guests. In the confusion, the assassin could have blamed a defective floor light, a concealed weapon, or one of the rival families in attendance. How did you recognize the signal? Luca asked. Clara folded her arms over the tear in her blouse. Because I saw the same housing 3 weeks ago in a shipping invoice from Belandi Stageworks. They supplied the lighting, Matteo said, on paper, but the payment did not go to Belandi. It passed through 2 contractors and ended in an account registered to St. Orsino Memorial Foundation. Luca knew the name. The foundation had paid for Adrian Moretti's funeral. Why didn't you bring this to me? I tried. Clara removed her phone from the evidence bag and opened a folder containing 3 reports. Each was marked delivered to Luca's private account. Luca checked his own device. None of them appeared in his messages. Matteo took both phones, comparing the transmission records. Her reports entered our server, but were redirected before reaching you. By whom? Luca asked. Someone with administrative privileges. Matteo looked toward Clara. She has those privileges. So do you, Clara replied, and 5 other people in this house. Luca ordered the bomb removed intact, and the ballroom quietly searched. No guests were permitted to leave, though they were not told why. Sophia watched from across the room, as Luca led Clara, Matteo, and 2 guards into the adjoining library. Clara spread the seating chart across a table and circled 4 changes made during the blackout. Luca had been moved onto the platform. Matteo's deputy had been seated near the exterior security doors. The Valenti family's attorney had been shifted beside Luca's financial controller. Clara herself had been removed from the head table and placed near the kitchen corridor. This wasn't only about killing you, she said. They positioned everyone needed to control what happened afterward. Your security command would be separated. Your financial controller would be surrounded by Valenti witnesses, and I would be close enough to the service passage to become the obvious suspect. Sophia entered before Luca could respond. Her father and 2 family guards followed. You locked down a room full of allies because your secretary found a blinking light, she said. Matteo's specialist appeared behind her, carrying the disarmed charge inside a blast container. Sophia's confidence faltered for only a moment. Then her attention shifted to Clara. How fortunate that she knew exactly where to look. The device was beneath Luca's assigned seat, Clara said. A seat you changed this afternoon. Sophia's father stepped forward. Mind your accusation. I didn't accuse her. I stated a fact. Clara turned the chart around. The amendment bore Sophia's initials, but the ink was still glossy. Sophia claimed she had moved Luca to make the engagement announcement more visible. It was plausible, and that was what disturbed Clara. Every element of the plot had been built around ordinary decisions that could be defended individually. Luca asked Sophia to return to the ballroom. She kissed his cheek before leaving, holding the gesture long enough for Clara to see it. Be careful, Sophia whispered. Fear can make loyal men mistake obsession for evidence. Once the doors closed, Clara asked Luca for access to the original renovation files. The hidden passage, isolated generator and platform wiring had all been designed during Adrian's time as consigliere. If he had survived his reported death, he would know every weakness in the estate. Luca hesitated, then authorized temporary access under Matteo's supervision. In the records room below the library, Clara searched contractor ledgers, while Matteo watched every keystroke. She found that Belandi Stageworks had been added to the approved vendor list 6 months earlier, using authorization from Luca's private office. The digital signature was valid. The biometric confirmation belonged to Luca. Yet the approval had been issued at 2:17 in the morning, while Luca was undergoing surgery after an ambush in Newark. "Someone copied your biometric key while you were unconscious," Clara said. A second file showed that the request had originated from her office computer. She opened the access log and felt the room tilt beneath her. Her credentials had approved the vendor, redirected her warnings, and downloaded the mansion's security plans. Matteo raised his weapon. "Step away from the terminal." Clara did not move. A notification appeared on the screen. An automatic transfer of $8 million had just entered an offshore account bearing her full legal name. At the same moment, guards burst into the room carrying a pistol found inside Clara's desk. Its serial number matched the weapon registered to Adrian Moretti before his supposed death. Luca looked from the money transfer to the gun, then to the woman who had just saved his life twice. Clara understood the architecture of the trap at last. Opening Elena's safe had not exposed the conspiracy. It had activated the final stage designed to make her responsible for it. Then every phone in the mansion received the same security image. Clara entering the platform alone 1 hour before the bomb was discovered. The image looked authentic because most of it was. Clara had entered the ballroom platform at 6:14 that evening, carrying Luca's speech cards and a replacement microphone battery. She remembered the exact moment, because Sophia's event coordinator had complained that Clara's shoes were leaving marks on the polished floor. What the photograph concealed was that the chair, drapery, and explosive device had not yet been placed there. Someone had cropped Clara from the earlier recording, replaced the background with footage captured after the blackout, and preserved enough imperfections to make the composite difficult to detect at a glance. Matteo enlarged the image and found no obvious break in the shadows. His deputy confirmed that Clara had been alone near the platform, though he claimed he could not remember what she had carried. Every piece of evidence now supported the same story. Her credentials had approved the false vendor. Her computer had intercepted the warnings. Her offshore account had received $8 million. Adrian's pistol had been discovered in her desk. She knew the mansion's hidden routes, possessed Elena's safe combination, and recognized the bomb before anyone else. Even the truth sounded like preparation. Luca dismissed everyone except Clara and Matteo. "Tell me what you haven't told me," he said. Clara looked toward Matteo. "Alone. You don't set the conditions anymore. Then I can't help you." Matteo placed Adrian's pistol on the table between them. "Your office was locked. Only you and Luca had keys. And whoever copied Luca's biometric access could have opened mine. Convenient. So is a dead man's gun appearing inside my desk. On the night his fingerprint appears in Elena's safe." Luca wanted to believe the fear in her voice, but Elena's death had taught him that betrayal often wore the face one most wanted to trust. His enemies had used lovers, cousins, and wounded children to enter protected rooms. Clara was not exempt, simply because she had made herself necessary. "Where is the missing section of Elena's tape?" he asked. "I don't know." "Who gave you Adrian's gun?" "No one." "Who owns the account?" "Not me." "Everything leads back to you. Because someone designed it that way." Clara's composure finally cracked. "Think about what you're saying. If I wanted you dead, why would I pull you away from the chair? To establish innocence after the first attempt failed." The answer came from Matteo, but Luca's silence allowed it to remain between them. Clara stared at Luca until the accusation became more painful than the slap. 7 years, she said quietly. 7 years of knowing where you slept, what you ate, which routes you traveled, and when your guards changed shifts. If I wanted you dead, Luca, you would not have survived the first week. Matteo moved toward her, but Luca raised a hand. "Lock her in the East Security Suite. No one speaks to her without me. You're putting me in a room controlled by the same system they already breached. Matteo will station 2 guards outside. You still don't understand. The system isn't the danger. The people controlling it are." Luca stepped closer. "Give me one name." Clara's eyes moved briefly toward Matteo, then returned to Luca. "I need proof before I give you a name, because you have already shown me what you do to people you believe without proof." He felt the words land but refused to retreat. "You worked for me." "No. I protected you." Her voice steadied. "You gave me a salary and a desk. I gave you every part of my life you never bothered to notice." Luca ordered the guards to take her upstairs. He did not look back as they led her from the records room. 20 minutes later, the engagement banquet resumed under heavier security. The explosive had been hidden, and the guests believed the interruption concerned a gas leak. Sophia stood at Luca's side while her father urged him to proceed with the announcement. Luca delayed, claiming that the legal documents required one final review. Upstairs, Clara sat inside the East Security Suite, with her wrists secured in front of her. A guard named Ben Russo stood inside the room, while another remained outside. The cassette recorder rested in an evidence case on the desk, waiting to be transferred to Matteo's laboratory. Clara watched Ben check his phone 3 times in less than a minute. Then he received a message, turned the screen away, and quietly locked the door. "Matteo wants the recorder moved," he said. Matteo would send 2 men and log the transfer. Ben drew a suppressed pistol. Clara threw herself sideways as the first shot entered the chair behind her. He crossed the room before she could reach the alarm. She caught his gun wrist with both hands, drove it against the desk, and used the chain between her cuffs to trap his thumb. The second shot shattered the lamp. Ben struck her across the temple, but Clara held on until the pistol fell. She kicked it beneath the bed and reached the door. The guard outside was already dead, a narrow wound visible beneath his jaw. Whoever had ordered Ben to kill her had arranged to blame him afterward. Clara took the dead guard's key, unlocked her cuffs, and grabbed Elena's recorder. Ben seized her ankle. She brought the metal evidence case down on his face, broke free, and ran into the corridor. Security cameras followed her toward the west staircase. She knew the footage would show only a prisoner escaping after attacking a guard. She also knew that if she stopped to explain, the missing section of Elena's message would vanish forever. At the service landing, a third gunman stepped from the shadows and fired. The bullet tore through Clara's upper arm, spinning her into the railing. She fell down 6 steps, forced herself upright, and entered the generator passage before he could fire again. By the time Luca received the alarm, the security feed showed Clara taking the recorder, stepping over a dead guard, and disappearing through a route only she seemed to know. Matteo handed him a radio. "Order?" Luca stared at the blood marking each step of Clara's escape. Then he gave the command that would haunt him long after the mansion fell silent. "Bring her back alive if she surrenders. If she raises that gun against another one of my men, shoot her." Beneath the estate, Clara pressed her wounded arm against her chest and followed the tunnel toward the abandoned carriage road. Behind her, the generator door opened. Ahead, headlights appeared where no vehicle should have been waiting. The headlights belonged to 2 black SUVs positioned across the abandoned carriage road, their engines already running. Clara stopped before stepping beyond the tunnel's shadow. Luca's men could not have reached the exit so quickly. Most of them did not even know the passage extended beyond the estate. 4 armed figures waited beside the vehicles wearing Moretti security jackets. But their boots were clean despite the rain-softened grounds. They had dressed inside the mansion. Clara pressed herself behind the stone arch as the gunman pursuing her entered the tunnel. One of the waiting men raised his radio. "She should have reached us by now." The answer came through an encrypted channel Clara recognized as belonging to the Valenti delegation. She retreated along the wall until she found a drainage opening barely wide enough to enter. The torn muscles in her arms screamed as she lowered herself into the culvert, but the darkness concealed her until a catering truck rolled away from the kitchen yard. Clara crawled beneath the rear platform, hooked one arm around its metal frame, and let the vehicle carry her beyond the estate gates. Back inside the mansion, Luca watched the security recording for the 4th time. The images appeared damning, yet something inside them resisted the story Matteo had assembled. Clara left the suite carrying Elena's recorder, but no pistol was visible in either hand. She stepped over the dead guard without taking his weapon. When she entered the west stairwell, blood already marked the sleeve of her blouse, even though the official timeline placed the first shot 30 seconds later. "Go back," Luca said. Matteo rewound the footage. For 11 seconds before Clara emerged from the room, the timestamp continued advancing, while the image remained perfectly still. A decorative tassel beside the window did not move despite air pouring from the ventilation grate. Someone had frozen the feed. "We need the original recording from the local camera buffer," Luca said. Matteo contacted the control room. The buffer had been erased. Luca went upstairs himself. Ben Russo lay unconscious but alive beside the desk. The suppressed pistol under the bed had fired twice. One bullet remained in the chair. The other had shattered the lamp. The dead guard outside had not been shot at all. He had been killed with a narrow blade before Clara escaped. If she had planned the attack, there was no reason to leave Ben breathing, and no reason to abandon 2 available guns. More troubling was the evidence bag on the floor. It had been opened from the bottom and resealed. Someone had intended to take Elena's recorder without breaking the numbered seal. Clara had interrupted them. That was the technical contradiction. The personal one waited inside her office. Her passport remained locked in the bottom drawer. Her emergency cash was untouched. Her winter coat, car keys, and medications sat exactly where she had left them. A woman planning to disappear with $8 million would not flee into a freezing rain without money, transportation, or a change of clothes. Luca opened the notebook beside her keyboard. Clara had recorded every irregular invoice in precise black handwriting, including Bellandi Stageworks, St. Orsino Memorial Foundation, and 3 Valenti-controlled contractors. The notes began 6 weeks before the engagement. She had been building a case, not inventing one after she was caught. Matteo entered with an update. Teams found blood at the Carriage Road exit. No body. Tire tracks indicate 2 vehicles were waiting. Who sent them? Luca asked. I assumed you did. I issued no deployment until after she entered the tunnel. Matteo's expression hardened. Someone else had known where Clara would emerge. Luca decided to create the third contradiction himself. He privately told Matteo that Clara had been seen on the North Service Road. He informed Sofia that a groundskeeper had spotted her near the river depot. To Sofia's father, he mentioned the abandoned chapel on the eastern boundary. Each location was false. Luca then placed loyal observers at all 3 sites, without explaining the test. 11 minutes later, 2 armed men arrived at the river depot in a Valenti delivery van. They searched the building, found nothing, and burned the vehicle before escaping on motorcycles. Only Sofia had been given that location. Luca returned to the ballroom. She was comforting frightened guests and discussing new security arrangements with her father. When she saw him, she smiled as if the evening could still be rescued. Did they find Clara? Not yet. Luca kissed Sofia's cheek, concealing the revulsion rising in him. She may have taken evidence to the river depot. Sofia's pulse jumped beneath his fingers. It was small, but he felt it. Then Matteo should send everyone there. He already has. Luca allowed her to believe the lie, then walked away before anger exposed him. He still did not know whether Sofia had ordered the attack or repeated the information to someone she trusted. Suspicion was not proof. Clara had tried to teach him that only an hour earlier. In the records room, Luca traced the offshore account receiving the $8 million. It had been opened in Clara's name 11 minutes before the transfer, using a scanned passport copy held by the Moretti personnel office. The application originated from Dominion Atlantic Bank, whose vice chairman was Sofia's uncle. The money had already been divided among 6 charities, one of which was St. Orsino Memorial Foundation. Luca followed its historical transactions and found a payment made 4 years earlier to a private medical transport company on the morning after Elena's murder. The passenger was listed as an unidentified male suffering extensive burns. His destination was a secluded rehabilitation facility outside the city. Adrian Moretti had not died 3 years ago because he had never been buried in the coffin bearing his name. Someone had manufactured his death after keeping him hidden long enough to change his appearance. Luca was preparing to leave for the rehabilitation facility when a traffic officer answered the alert on Clara's stolen route. A catering truck from the engagement had been found abandoned behind a closed laundromat. Blood marked its undercarriage. Across the street, a pharmacy camera showed Clara staggering into an old apartment building while clutching Elena's recorder. Luca recognized the address. Elena had secretly purchased the building 1 month before her death. As he reached for his coat, Matteo warned that the shooter might already be following the same trail. Luca checked the time. 43 minutes had passed since Clara entered the building. The camera had recorded no one coming out. Then the live feed went black. Luca left the mansion without telling Matteo where he was going. He ordered the security chief to seal the estate, preserve every recording and prevent the Valenti delegation from leaving, then sent his armored convoy toward the rehabilitation facility as a decoy. Luca took an unmarked sedan from the staff garage and drove alone to the apartment building Elena had purchased before her death. Rain silvered the empty street. The pharmacy camera across the road remained dark, its cable cut rather than remotely disabled. Whoever had followed Clara was close enough to touch the system. Luca entered through the rear courtyard with his pistol drawn. The building had 6 apartments, but only one door showed fresh blood near the handle. He knocked once. Clara. No answer. I came alone. Something moved behind the door, followed by the metallic scrape of furniture across the floor. That is exactly what the man trying to kill me would say. Her voice was weaker than she intended. Luca lowered his weapon and placed it on the hallway floor. My gun is outside. If you still believe I'm here to arrest you, you can leave through another exit. There is no other exit. Elena never bought a building with only one. Silence followed. Then the lock released. Clara stood several feet inside, holding an old revolver with both hands. The sleeve of her blouse had been cut away, exposing a crude bandage wrapped around her upper arm. Blood had soaked through it. Her skin looked gray beneath the dim light, and a bruise was spreading along her temple. Elena's recorder rested on a table beside an open medical kit. Where did you get the revolver? Luca asked. Elena kept it behind the kitchen radiator. And the medical supplies? Same place. You knew about this apartment. I knew Elena had prepared somewhere to hide. I didn't know the address until I examined the seating chart. Clara indicated 4 table numbers circled in pencil. Read them as street coordinates instead of seat assignments. Elena used the same substitution system when she sent confidential donations. Whoever changed the chart accidentally completed the code she left me. Luca understood why Clara had gone pale in the ballroom. The altered seats had not merely revealed the assassination plan. They had pointed her toward Elena's contingency. "Put the gun down," he said. "Not yet. The bullet passed through your arm, but you've lost too much blood. Then say what you came to say before I lose enough to stop caring." Luca had commanded killers, judges, and politicians without hesitation. Facing Clara's wounded distrust required something more difficult. I was wrong. Her expression did not change. About which part? Accusing me, hitting me, or ordering your men to shoot me? All of it. That does not make me safe with you. No, it doesn't. Luca removed his phone and slid it across the floor. On the screen were the frozen security frames, the offshore account records, and photographs of the armed men at the False River location. I gave Sofia information no one else received. Valenti men arrived 11 minutes later. Clara lowered the revolver slightly. Luca told her about the medical transport payment and the unidentified burned patient. He expected relief that he finally believed her. Instead, she looked frightened. Adrian was not the patient. His fingerprint was inside the cassette case. That only proves he touched it after Elena sealed it, or that someone preserved his print to make you believe he did. She crossed to the table, fighting dizziness, and opened Elena's recorder. Look at the splice. Luca examined the repaired tape. The cut ends had been joined with a nearly invisible strip of clear material. Medical closure film, Clara said. It seals surgical dressings. It is expensive, difficult to obtain, and designed not to damage magnetic material. Whoever removed Elena's words knew exactly how to preserve the recording. The rehabilitation facility, or someone with access to its supplies. Luca thought of the night Elena died. Her body had been identified by dental records because the explosion had destroyed her face. Adrian had supervised the recovery. The family physician had signed the identification, and the Moretti security office had transported the remains. Every institution he trusted had passed the evidence from one compromised hand to another. What did Elena discover? He asked. Clara finally set down the revolver. She explained that 6 weeks earlier she had found payments moving from Moretti construction companies into Valenti-controlled vendors. At first, the sums appeared too small to matter. Together, however, they financed medical transport, facial reconstruction, forged identity records, and the purchase of restricted explosives. Elena had traced the same companies 4 years earlier. She believed Adrian was preparing to remove Luca and force the family into an alliance with the Valentis. The car bomb had been intended for Luca, but Elena had taken his vehicle after receiving an anonymous warning that their daughter was in danger. Someone had used the child to change Elena's route. "Why didn't you tell me any of this before tonight?" Luca asked. "I sent 3 reports. They vanished. I scheduled a private meeting, and Sofia appeared in your office before I arrived. Yesterday, a photograph of my younger brother was left on my desk with the time he walks home from work." Clara's voice tightened. "I moved him out of the city, but I couldn't know whether they followed him. If I openly accused Sofia, or anyone in security without proof, they would kill him and destroy the records. I planned to place the evidence directly in your hands before the announcement. Then Elena's safe alarm activated, and you arrived before I could find the second cassette." Luca had believed her silence indicated guilt. In reality, every communication route around him had been turned into a weapon. He opened the medical kit. "Sit down." Clara tried to refuse, but her knees weakened. Luca caught her before she struck the floor and lowered her onto a chair. She stiffened when he touched her injured arm. "I'm going to replace the bandage. You can keep the revolver in your other hand." It was not forgiveness, but she allowed it. Luca cleaned the wound and tightened a fresh dressing while Clara watched him without trust. The bullet had passed through muscle without striking bone, yet she needed a surgeon, antibiotics, and rest. None of those were possible until the building was secure. A floorboard creaked in the apartment above them. Clara looked toward the ceiling. This building has been empty since Elena died. Luca killed the lamp. A thin beam of red light traveled beneath the front door, as someone outside swept the room with a laser sight. The first bullet tore through the lock. Luca pulled Clara behind the kitchen wall as 2 attackers entered from the hallway, and a third descended the fire escape. "They tracked your car," Clara whispered. "I changed vehicles twice. Not you, the recorder." She tore open its battery compartment and removed a transmitter smaller than a fingernail. The device had been planted beneath the cassette reel. Luca crushed it beneath his shoe, but the attackers already knew their location. Clara pointed toward a rusted valve beside the boiler. When I opened that, hit the fire alarm. Luca fired twice through the wall, forcing the first attackers to take cover. Clara turned the valve. Scalding steam exploded into the hallway, blinding the men as the alarm released the building's ancient steel fire doors. One attacker became trapped between two sections. Luca disarmed him, while Clara used the revolver to shatter the light above the fire escape, exposing the silhouette of the third gunman. Luca fired and drove him back. They escaped through a coal chute hidden beneath the kitchen floor, emerging in an alley behind the neighboring building. Clara had designed the exit. Luca had provided the force to reach it. For the first time, neither had survived by commanding the other. As Luca helped her into the sedan, the captured attacker's phone began ringing in his pocket. The caller identification displayed Matteo Rinaldi's private security code. The phone continued ringing inside Luca's coat as he drove away from the apartment. Clara reached for it, but he kept his eyes on the road. If Matteo sent those men, answering tells him we survived. And if someone copied his code the way they copied your biometric key, killing him before we verify it gives the real traitor another corpse to hide behind. Luca glanced at her. Hours earlier, he would have treated the caller identification as proof. Now he allowed the call to expire. An encrypted message appeared 10 seconds later. Package not recovered. Initiate Orsino protocol before midnight. The message contained no names, explanation, or location. It was written for people who already understood the plan. Clara photographed the screen with Luca's phone and removed the attacker's battery. Midnight is also the deadline in Elena's recording, and the time Sophia's father insisted we sign the joint security agreement. Luca had considered the document ceremonial, an operational pact, allowing the Moretti and Valenti families to share intelligence after the engagement announcement. Clara had reviewed an earlier draft and rejected 3 clauses. The final version had arrived that afternoon while she was preparing to open Elena's safe. I never saw the version waiting downstairs, she said. Then that is what they need you removed from. Luca drove to an old boxing club he owned through a company unconnected to the Moretti organization. Its basement contained a treatment room once used for injured fighters who could not safely enter public hospitals. He summoned Dr. Naomi Bell, a retired trauma surgeon who had delivered Luca's daughter and remained loyal to Elena's memory. Luca gave her no address over the phone. A driver collected her from a predetermined location and changed vehicles twice. Naomi cleaned Clara's wound, confirmed that the bullet had missed the artery and bone, then closed the torn muscle under local anesthetic. Clara could move, but lifting her arm or losing more blood could cause permanent damage. Luca remained outside the treatment room until Naomi finished. When he entered, Clara was pale but alert, her arms secured against her body. Elena's recorder lay disassembled on the table. The transmitter was installed recently, Clara said. Its battery would not have survived 4 years. Whoever cut the tape entered the safe after the engagement announcement activated Elena's code. The safe alarm notified them before it notified me, which means the system was designed to give them time to reach the room, remove the name, and leave evidence against me. Luca examined the medical film joining the cassette. Naomi recognized the manufacturer and found a microscopic batch number under magnification. The product had been withdrawn 2 years earlier after a sterilization defect. Only 4 medical facilities in the state had received that batch. One was the Rehabilitation Center, paid by St. Orsino Memorial Foundation. Another was a private surgical clinic owned by the Valenti family. Luca now possessed suspicion, access, and financial connection, but none of it proved who had ordered Elena's murder. The missing section of tape remained the only direct statement from Elena. Clara opened the final security agreement on Luca's tablet. 3 clauses had been inserted after her last review. At midnight, once Luca signed, Valenti personnel would gain temporary control over Moretti ports, digital communications, and estate security during the transition period. If Luca died or became medically incapacitated within 90 days, Sophia would exercise his voting authority until the marriage contract was resolved. The bomb was not supposed to destroy the ballroom, Clara said. It was supposed to wound you severely enough for Sophia to invoke this clause. If it killed you, she would still control the emergency vote as your publicly declared fiancé. And Adrian? The Valenti family gains legal control. Whoever survived that clinic gains the Moretti network from inside. Luca wanted to cancel the banquet, arrest Sophia, and tear the agreement apart. Clara stopped him. If you move now, Sophia denies everything. Her father destroys the financial records, and the person behind Elena's murder disappears again. We have to let them believe the signing is still happening. It was her plan, not his. Luca listened. They would return separately. Luca would announce that Clara had escaped with the cassette, but that Matteo's team had recovered a digital copy from the safe. He would claim Elena's complete message would be authenticated and shown to the family council immediately after the agreement was signed. That information would force the conspirators to act before midnight. However, they would not tell every suspect the same location. Luca would tell Matteo the copy was stored in the estate's evidence vault. Sofia would hear that it was hidden inside Luca's private study. Her father would be told it had already been transferred to the bank's secure server. Each target would receive a different false path. Clara would monitor all three under an access identity the conspirators did not know she possessed. One Elena had created years earlier for auditing household expenses. And if the caller truly was Matteo? Luca asked. Then he will expose himself by moving against the evidence vault. You're asking me to place my life in a room controlled by a man who may have sent assassins after you. No, I'm asking you to make him believe your life is there. Luca studied her face. You will remain here with Naomi. The audit identity only works from a terminal inside the mansion. You were shot less than 2 hours ago. And the people who shot me are about to take your organization, your daughter's inheritance and every record. Elena died protecting. Clara leaned closer. You don't get to lock me away again and call it protection. Luca disliked the risk, but he could no longer deny her authority over the plan she had built. You stay with me. If Naomi says you stop, you stop. Agreed. Before leaving, Clara used the attacker's phone to send one short reply. Package damaged. Moretti believes Hayes acted alone. Protocol remains active. The message showed as delivered through Matteo's private routing code. No answer came, but someone inside the mansion immediately accessed the sealed file containing Clara's employee records. The intruder searched for her brother's new address, found the false location she had planted weeks earlier, and forwarded it to a Valenti-owned number. That established the second level of evidence. The same network controlling Matteo's code also possessed Valenti access and had participated in the threat that silenced Clara. Luca and Clara entered the estate through the old generator passage at 11:08. Naomi remained in a concealed room nearby with medical supplies. Luca returned to the ballroom alone, where Sofia greeted him with tears and a carefully staged embrace. He announced that the engagement agreement would be signed at midnight as planned. Behind the walls, Clara reached Elena's hidden audit terminal and began watching the 3 false evidence locations. At 11:31, someone used Matteo's credentials to open the evidence vault. At 11:34, Sofia excused herself from the ballroom and walked toward Luca's private study. At 11:37, her father called Dominion Atlantic Bank and ordered its secure server erased. All 3 suspects had taken the bait simultaneously. Then Clara noticed a 4th response they had not planned for. Dr. Naomi's medical access card had just opened the abandoned Moretti family crypt beneath St. Orsino Cemetery. According to the security log, Naomi had entered the crypt 12 minutes earlier, even though she was standing in the room beside Clara. Naomi removed her access card from her coat and placed it beside Clara's keyboard. The embossed serial number matched the credential being used beneath St. Orsino Cemetery, but the card had never left Naomi's possession. The crypt system requires more than a card, she said. It verifies the holder's fingerprint against the Moretti Medical Archive. Clara studied the access record. The reader had accepted both factors, which meant the conspirators had copied Naomi's card and stored fingerprint, just as they had copied Luca's biometric key. More importantly, the crypt had been opened for a reason. Adrian's coffin was inside it. Luca could not leave the engagement floor without alerting Sofia, so Clara sent a silent command to an exterior camera overlooking the cemetery. The feed showed a maintenance van beside the crypt and a hooded figure carrying a narrow metal case toward it. Before Clara could enlarge the image, every window on her terminal closed. Elena's hidden audit identity had been revoked. They found us, she said. The concealed room's ventilation stopped. Its steel door locked from the outside. Naomi reached for her phone, but the screen displayed a system message informing her that the device had been remotely disabled. Clara tried the manual release. The handle would not turn. Someone had inserted a physical bolt through the opposite side. At the same moment, Matteo entered the ballroom with blood on his collar and reported that 2 masked intruders had breached the evidence vault. One guard was dead, another badly wounded, and the digital copy of Elena's recording had been destroyed. Matteo claimed the attackers had used Clara's administrative credentials. Luca listened without revealing that the copy had never existed. Did you see either attacker? He asked. One was built like a woman. She escaped through the service corridor before we could identify her. Matteo presented a torn strip of cream-colored fabric stained with blood, the same material as Clara's blouse. The conspirators had found the garment she discarded at the apartment and carried part of it back to the mansion. Matteo was not merely responding to Luca's false trail. He was manufacturing evidence to place Clara inside the vault. Across the ballroom, Sofia returned from Luca's study carrying a velvet jewelry box. She opened it before several guests and revealed Elena's missing necklace. "I found this beneath Clara's files in your desk," she said, her voice breaking with carefully measured shock. She must have hidden it there before she ran. Luca understood the move. Sofia had gone to the study because he had told her the fictional recording was there, but when she found nothing, she planted the necklace to justify her presence. Her father then announced that Dominion Atlantic Bank had detected an attempted cyber attack originating from Clara's employee account. He claimed he had ordered the affected server wiped to protect Moretti assets. Each conspirator had transformed Luca's bait into fresh proof against her. They had expected a trap. Worse, they knew exactly how he constructed one. Beneath the ballroom, Clara used a screwdriver from Naomi's medical kit to remove the terminal's outer casing. The audit connection was gone, but the crypt authentication request had temporarily opened a path into the old medical archive. Archived biometric records were stored locally, because the crypt predated the estate's modern network. Clara found Naomi's original fingerprint, then searched for every credential authenticated by the same master encryption key. Luca's record appeared. So did Adrian Moretti's. A fourth profile had accessed the estate more than 400 times during the past 3 years. Matteo Rinaldi. At first, the prints appeared different, because Matteo's record had been digitally stretched, and several ridge endings had been removed. Clara reversed the alterations. The broken ridge across Adrian's right thumb aligned exactly with Matteo's. "Matteo is Adrian," she whispered. Naomi stared at the overlapping images. "That's impossible. Luca knew Adrian all his life." The burned patient transported after Elena's murder received reconstructive surgery. Adrian disappeared from public view for months, staged his death, and returned after changing his face, voice, and posture. The Valentis supplied his identity. Then Luca hired him to rebuild the security system Adrian had designed in the first place. Clara finally understood why Matteo pretended not to know the hidden generator passage. He had approved its construction years before. He had restrained her beside Elena's safe so he could recover the cut tape. His private code directed the assassins because it was genuinely his. The strongest evidence against him had been visible from the beginning, but everyone believed the dead could not return. Naomi tried to copy the biometric comparison onto the terminal's internal memory. A warning appeared. Remote purge initiated. 90 seconds. Clara could not transmit the file, but she could remove the storage chip. She opened the terminal's sealed inner compartment, while Naomi searched the walls for another exit. Upstairs, Luca took his place at the signing table. The clock read 11:51. Sofia sat beside him, her father across from them. The agreement was placed between two silver pens. Matteo positioned himself behind Luca's right shoulder, close enough to kill him if the performance failed. "There is one more matter," Sofia's father announced. The ballroom screens illuminated. Edited security footage showed Clara entering the platform, opening the safe, attacking Ben, and breaking into the evidence vault. Then an audio recording played, in which Clara's voice appeared to say, "Once Luca signs, the Moretti organization will belong to us." The sentence had been assembled from several reports and conversations, but the guests did not know her speech patterns well enough to hear the cuts. Angry voices rose throughout the ballroom. Sofia placed Elena's necklace beside the contract. "This woman manipulated your grief, stole from your family, and tried to murder you. Before our families unite, she must be condemned publicly." Luca looked toward the hidden camera above the orchestra. Clara was supposed to be watching. He could not know that she was trapped below him. "Clara Hayes betrayed my trust," he said, forcing each word through the shame in his throat. "Any protection previously granted to her is revoked." The statement quieted the room. Sofia believed he had surrendered. Matteo leaned closer. "Sign the agreement, and my men will finish what she started." It sounded like reassurance to anyone listening, but Luca heard the threat beneath it. The ballroom doors opened. 2 guards dragged Clara inside with her injured arm twisted behind her back. They had breached the concealed room seconds before she removed the storage chip. Naomi was no longer with her. A thin line of blood ran from Clara's bandage to her hand. Matteo stepped down from the platform and struck her across the wounded shoulder, forcing her to her knees before the gathered families. "You should have died in the tunnel," he whispered too quietly for the guests to hear. Clara looked at his bare right hand. Blood from her bandage marked the center of his thumb, making the broken ridge unmistakable. She lifted her eyes toward Luca. His expression remained cold for the room, but his left hand had closed around the silver pen in the pattern they had agreed upon. 2 fingers above, 1 below. The counter trap was still alive. Clara allowed Matteo to take the recorder from inside her coat. He believed it was the evidence she had risked everything to preserve. He did not know that Naomi had replaced the original cassette with a blank one at the clinic. Midnight, Sophia's father said. Sign. Luca lowered the pen toward the agreement. Matteo stood behind Clara with one hand on her neck, believing he controlled the only witness who could expose him. With 3 seconds remaining before the terminal purge, Clara had pressed the biometric storage chip beneath the adhesive of her fresh bandage. Now she tore the dressing loose and slapped the blood-covered chip onto the signing table. Before you give him your empire, she said, looking directly at Luca, ask your security chief why his fingerprints belong to Adrian Moretti. The clock reached midnight. Instead of stopping, the second hand continued forward, and every lock in the ballroom sealed at once. The sealed doors transformed the ballroom from a celebration hall into a cage. Moretti captains reached for their weapons, but Matteo's men had already taken positions along the walls. Several wore Valenti insignia beneath their jackets. Sophia's father stood calmly behind the signing table, as if the lockdown were part of the ceremony. Matteo released Clara and picked up the blood-covered storage chip. A damaged woman with administrative access produces a piece of corrupted data, and we are expected to believe it proves a dead man has returned? He crushed the outer casing between his fingers, but Clara did not react. The biometric memory sat inside a hardened ceramic core, designed to survive fire. The archive did not compare names, she said. It compared ridge patterns. Your record was altered, but your hands were not. Matteo held up his thumb for the room to see. Then scan it. Clara controlled the system long enough to replace anything inside it. It was the rebuttal she had expected. Digital evidence alone could always be blamed on the woman accused of manipulating the network. Luca set down the silver pen without signing. Use the council reader, he ordered. The signing table contained an independent biometric device, used to authenticate family votes and succession orders. It remained disconnected from the mansion's security network, and could be opened only by 3 council members acting together. Luca's uncle, an elderly captain, and the head of the Moretti Financial Council entered their keys. Matteo's confidence weakened. He stepped back, but 2 captains blocked him. If you are Matteo Rinaldi, Luca said, the reader will confirm it. Matteo placed his thumb against the glass. The device searched the offline family archive. A name appeared on the ballroom screen. Adrian Moretti. Status: deceased. A younger photograph followed. The face was different, but the height, blood type, and skeletal measurements matched. Naomi's medical archive on Clara's chip supplied the remaining comparison. Old fractures in Adrian's left hand, a childhood surgical screw in his shoulder, and extensive reconstructive work performed after Elena's death. The ballroom erupted. Matteo tore his thumb from the reader. She manufactured it all. Before or after you locked her inside a suite and sent Ben Russo to murder her? Luca asked. The surviving guard's statement appeared on the screens, recorded after he regained consciousness. Ben admitted receiving the order through Matteo's private channel. He had not known who controlled it, but the payment promised to him had originated from St. Orsino Memorial Foundation. Clara then displayed the 3 false locations used in the counter trap. Matteo's credentials breached the evidence vault. Sophia searched Luca's study. Her father attempted to erase the bank server. None of you followed evidence, Clara said. You followed 3 different lies because each of you already knew what you were trying to destroy. Sophia stepped forward. I went to Luca's study to retrieve Elena's necklace. Clara planted it there. The necklace was never in the evidence vault after Elena's death, Clara replied. The police received a counterfeit. The original remained with the person who removed it from Elena's body before the car burned. By producing it tonight, you proved your family possessed evidence taken from the murder scene. Sophia looked toward her father. He had told her the necklace came from Adrian. The hesitation between them was small but public. Adrian saw the alliance begin to fracture and activated his contingency. Orsino, he said into his cuff. The ballroom lights turned red. Hidden panels opened along the balcony, revealing 6 armed men. Valenti guards drew their weapons while Adrian seized the council reader and drove his elbow into the elderly captain beside him. Sophia pulled a pistol from beneath the signing table and aimed at Luca. You should have signed when you still had a choice. Luca overturned the table as she fired. The bullet struck the silver inkstand and sent fragments across the platform. Moretti captains took cover behind stone columns. Guests dropped to the floor. Adrian's men fired from above, using the height of the balcony to pin Luca's loyalists inside the center of the room. Clara crawled behind the overturned table, protecting her wounded arm. She found the agreement beneath Luca's chair and saw that Sophia's father had already signed it. A clause on the final page activated emergency control if violence disrupted the ceremony. Even without Luca's signature, provided a Moretti council member authenticated the event. Adrian still possessed the council reader. He pressed his bloody thumb to the device. As Adrian Moretti, he remained a member of the family by birth. The system accepted him. Across the estate, Moretti communications began transferring to Valenti control. Clara tore the final page from the agreement. The digital transfer continued because authentication had already begun. "The contract server," she shouted to Luca. "It needs the original document's embedded seal to complete verification." Sophia heard her and lunged across the platform. Clara wrapped the torn page around the hot silver lamp beside the table. Sophia grabbed her injured arm, reopening the wound. Clara nearly collapsed, but instead of fighting Sophia's strength, she stepped toward her and pulled the tablecloth around Sophia's pistol hand. The weapon discharged harmlessly into the floor. Clara drove the burning document into the overturned champagne bucket. Water destroyed the heat-sensitive seal. The transfer froze at 63%. Adrian struck Luca across the face with the council reader and reached for a backup drive inside his jacket. Luca caught his wrist. They crashed into the edge of the platform, trading blows with the brutality of men who understood that only one would leave with the Moretti name. "Elena was supposed to take your daughter and leave," Adrian hissed. "She chose the wrong car." It was not a theatrical confession. It was an attempt to wound Luca while they fought. But the silver pen on the floor was still transmitting sound to Elena's audit terminal. Clara had activated it before being dragged into the ballroom. Adrian continued, believing the gunfire concealed his voice. "She found the accounts. She would have destroyed everything. I gave her one chance to stay silent." Luca's face changed. "So you sent the message about my daughter. I needed her driving your car." Adrian drew a narrow blade from his sleeve. Luca blocked the first strike, but the second cut across his side. Before Adrian could drive the blade deeper, Clara slid the council reader away with her foot. Its cable wrapped around Adrian's ankle. Luca pulled him off balance and drove him into the platform. The biometric device shattered, ending the transfer. On the balcony, the fire suppression system suddenly released dense white foam across the gunman. Naomi appeared inside the control booth. Before the guards breached the hidden audit room, Clara had pushed her through a maintenance duct with instructions to reach the manual fire controls. Blinded and separated, Adrian's shooters lost their advantage. Luca's loyal captains advanced from both sides and disarmed them. Sophia's father attempted to reach a side passage, but the door remained sealed by the very lockdown his allies had activated. Sophia crawled toward her fallen pistol. Clara stepped on it before she could reach it. "You were invisible," Sophia spat. "That was your mistake," Clara answered. "Invisible women hear everything." Adrian, bleeding but conscious, laughed from the floor. "You still have nothing that proves what happened 4 years ago. A damaged recording and words lost beneath gunfire will not survive a courtroom or a council." Clara looked toward the ballroom speakers. The gunfire had not concealed his voice. Elena's recorder began playing, not the damaged cassette, but the live transmission captured by the silver pen. Adrian's statements repeated clearly through every speaker. He had threatened Elena, used Luca's daughter to alter her route, and placed her in the car intended to explode. The final level of evidence now had 2 independent sources: Elena's warning created before her death, and Adrian's own authenticated voice explaining the method while attempting to complete the same conspiracy. Luca faced the families who had watched Clara kneel before them. "Clara Hayes did not betray this organization," he said. "She saved every person in this room, while the rest of us were still deciding whether she deserved to be believed." No one moved as he crossed the platform, removed his jacket, and placed it around Clara's shoulders. Then he turned toward Adrian. "You spent 4 years hiding behind a dead man's grave. Tonight, you will answer under your real name." By dawn, the Moretti estate no longer resembled the place where an engagement had been celebrated. The ballroom remained sealed, while Luca's attorneys collected sworn statements, preserved the council reader, and duplicated every recording through 3 independent forensic services. Adrian and the surviving gunman were confined in separate rooms under guards chosen by the family council, rather than Matteo's compromised security division. Sophia and her father demanded protection under the alliance agreement, but the destruction of its embedded seal and proof of fraudulent biometric authorization made the contract invalid. Luca could have handled the betrayal privately, as generations of Moretti leaders had handled their enemies, but a hidden execution would have left Clara's innocence vulnerable to rumor. Through an outside attorney, he surrendered Elena's recording, Adrian's biometric results, the medical files, bank transactions, and ballroom audio to a special prosecutor. Doing so opened parts of the Moretti organization to legal scrutiny and cost Luca several protected companies, 2 political alliances, and control of 1 port. He accepted every loss. Adrian was charged under his real identity with Elena's murder, attempted murder, conspiracy, and identity fraud. Sophia and her father were indicted for financial crimes, evidence tampering, and participation in the attempted takeover. Ben Russo survived and agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. The surviving guards confirmed that Clara had been targeted before she ever opened Elena's safe. Her name was cleared in law, in the family council, and before every guest who had watched her forced to her knees. Luca refused to let that restoration happen through a written announcement. 3 days later, after Clara had undergone surgery and received permission to leave the private hospital, he reconvened the families in the same ballroom. Clara entered with her injured arm supported in a sling and a fading bruise across her face. No one looked through her this time. Conversations stopped. Chairs moved back. One by one, the people who had ignored her stood. Luca waited beside the platform but did not ask her to join him there. He stepped down to meet her on the floor. "I accused Clara Hayes without allowing her to present the truth," he said. "I struck her, imprisoned her, and gave an order that could have killed her. None of those choices can be excused by the evidence placed before me. They were mine." He did not mention grief, pressure, or betrayal. He did not ask the room to understand him. "She saved my life, protected my family, and preserved the truth Elena died trying to reveal. This organization failed her, because I failed her first." Luca then dissolved the security command Adrian had built, and offered Clara authority to design its replacement. She declined. A murmur traveled through the room. Luca accepted her answer without argument. Later, in the private suite, Clara stood before Elena's safe, while Luca remained near the doorway. The damaged cassette had been returned to its velvet shelf. "I spent years believing loyalty meant staying," Clara said. "But I stayed so long that I allowed everyone here to treat my sacrifices as part of my job, including me, especially you." Luca placed her office keys on the desk, along with a signed release giving her complete ownership of the investigative files she had created. "You are free of every contract, debt, and obligation to this family. If you leave tonight, no one will follow you." Clara searched his face for the command hidden inside the offer. There was none. "And if I stay, then you choose the terms, not me." Clara left the Moretti estate that evening. For 4 months, Luca did not ask her to return. He sent no gifts and used no guards to watch her. He cooperated with the investigation, rebuilt his relationship with his daughter, and dismantled the systems Adrian had corrupted. Clara founded an independent security and forensic auditing firm, with Naomi as one of its advisors. Her first major client was not Luca. Her fifth was. When the Moretti Council requested her services, Clara submitted a contract granting her full investigative independence, authority to refuse Luca's orders, and the power to terminate the agreement publicly if anyone interfered. Luca signed without changing a word. Their relationship grew after that, not through possession or rescue, but through difficult conversations, shared decisions, and the slow return of trust. The first time Luca asked Clara to dinner, she made him wait 3 days for an answer. The first time he told her he loved her, she did not reward the confession with immediate forgiveness. She asked whether he could love a woman he could not control. Luca answered by placing Elena's safe key in Clara's hand, not as a symbol of ownership, but as proof that no locked room, buried truth, or family name would ever again stand above her judgment. Months later, Clara entered the Moretti council chamber, wearing a dark tailored suit, her scars visible, and her head held high. Every person at the table rose before she reached her seat. Luca did not pull out the chair beside him. He waited until Clara chose it herself.